I've been trying to sell those watches for a very long time, and they still don't sell. Today I will be completely transparent as always, and I will admit certain watches don't sell. So let's talk about why those pieces are not moving and what's the current market today. I have been in the market for about 15 years as a dealer, as a collector for a longer time, and the changes have been pretty drastic between what happened 15, 20, 25 years ago. When I was a kid, I started looking for watches. I was meeting older guys and what they were collecting or what they knew about watches, and what the trends or what the market is today has completely changed. Okay, people were not buying watches in the past for the sole perspective of investing, of making money. They were just loving watches and collecting them for what they were. It didn't matter if the watch was worth a fortune, because none of those watches were really worth a lot. For example, a Paul Newman was maybe 20, 25, 30,000, 20, 25 years ago, or even less, even before. If we're talking a Submariner, it was maybe $800 Canadian, okay, regardless if it had a pointed crown guard, a square crown guard, 6538, which are really rare watches, or a 5513, they're all falling in the same, let's say, lot of Submariners. So it didn't really matter the model. Or the year. It only mattered, okay, well, it's a sub, that's the price, that's what we agree on. Everyone was trading them, buying them at 600 bucks, $700, selling them for $100 more. That was the market. Today, we're nitpicking at every single detail. So obviously, the knowledge is a lot more deep today, but in surface, people are still very superficial. So that's what creates a big gap between the knowledge and what I'm trying to give you guys and the people who just want to watch. So you're looking at someone who only wants to spend 8, 9, 10, $15,000, whatever they want to spend on a newer watch or on a vintage watch, or something. Let's say most of the people are going to look on at something like a 5-digit sub, and they're not going to really look at a 5513 or 1680, just because they're afraid of the vintage pieces. They're afraid of what people are telling them or what they're reading online. That being said, what happens now is that I am stuck with certain watches. They always sell, okay? So I don't mean to be too bait clicky in any way, okay? But those watches are gonna eventually sell, and people are always looking at the price. So they're looking at to buy a Datejust. They're looking at a price before the watch. So I always tell them, well, that price can get you a good watch of that model, but cannot get you a good watch of the Datejust that you're looking for. So that's why vintage has been a bit left aside in a way at a certain level. We're talking about Tudors in the past few videos, and we're talking about the brand being something that is very common in Canada, and I do get a lot of them in the store. It doesn't mean that the brand is bad in any way, and especially when you're looking at vintage watches and the older ones, you have extremely rare watches for a very affordable price if you compare a similar brand or a similar model from Rolex, from, I don't know, Patek or whatever, and you get a lot of value for what it is. Tudors are really classic watches in regards to their size, to their uniqueness. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of different dials. If you look online, there's a few collectors that have crazy rare watches, and I've never seen those before. And it makes it really interesting to actually chase after those. And again, I'm just going around Tudor and Rolex because those are very common watches, but there's a lot more to it. A lot of the vintage chronographs are really interesting. You do have a lot of actually 22, 23, 72, 92. If this is a bit of gibberish for you, go and look it up. I always suggest people to look stuff up. So if you're looking for everything that Lemania made, that Omega made, they made, for example, the chronograph, the soccer time. You have all the Speedmasters in different variants. You can go a lot into the depth of every single brand, and that's what's lacking right now. It's all that superficiality. The fact that people are only looking for a brand, they're looking for something that's easily recognizable by themselves and their peers. So it becomes something that's very trendy, but yet it makes it very uniform. So everyone is gonna wear the same thing, always the same thing. So you go, we're in Montreal. So if I walk on the streets of downtown, what am I gonna see? I'm gonna see Daytonas, a few subs. Then I was in a bar for once in a blue moon lately, and what I did see there, I saw like 4 Daytonas in a span of an hour. Just people walking by, and obviously I'm a watch geek, so first thing I'm looking at is the watch on someone's wrist, and it's very uniform. People are just doing the same of the same. Again, same thing as I said in the last video, is that if you create that uniformity, everyone's gonna think the same, everyone's gonna consume the same thing. And we don't want that in luxury, okay? You cannot just wear Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and a Rolex and a few Gucci things and you're done. There's so much more to it. And that diversity creates a really nice demand and also creates a personality that's going to be yours. And that's what's missing right now. And that's what, let's say, the pandemic times and the past, I'd say maybe 5, 6 years, have created that funnel of non-diversity, of not being unique. Everyone wants the same thing. And am I too niche in what I'm doing? Maybe I've become a bit tired of what people want. I've become tired of saying the same and repeating myself 5, 10, 15 times in a day, of doing all the same. One of the comments that I got in the last video is that actually I was too niche. Maybe, but at the same time, it just makes the store a lot more interesting, I find. And it just makes the fact that you come in my store and you're gonna see, okay, well, you're maybe gonna see 80 watches right now. You come in 2 weeks, maybe 20 watches have changed in the inventory. Whereas if you go to someone selling only Rolexes, you're gonna see, oh, well, he had 5, they just two tones, now he has 4 or 6 or 8. Doesn't change anything. It's all the same watch, it's all the same model. So it just makes me a bit more picky. I'm a lot more selective than I used to be, and I really try to choose the best for you guys and the best for what I can offer on the market, especially locally. Like, I'm in Montreal, I'm by no means in New York or Florida or California or in Paris or even Hong Kong or Japan. I'm not even going to talk about those markets because they're so big. So the fact that there are different brands in the vintage, the fact that everyone else, or let's say about 70, 80, 90% of the dealers or wherever you go, are going to choose the easy path and going to choose something that makes easy money and they can roll the same, okay? I'm really not happy to repeat myself, but that's what I've been living for the past 5 years or almost 5 years owning the store. So it just makes my whole inventory a bit different. Do I get modern stuff? I do get them. I do choose to actually sometimes not buy them, or I call someone I know and they will buy those things of my customers. And it's not that I don't get in contact with Daytonas, Batmans, Batgirls, or the APs or any of those. It's only that I choose not to display them in my inventory, or I just choose to actually call a guy in New York and tell him, hey, I have this, are you interested? And we just make a deal. I make a few $100, and people think we're making a fortune on those. We don't. And whatever I can get, it's fine. But it just makes my choices mine, and it makes it a bit more unique to actually come here and say, hey, I haven't seen that anywhere else but here. I'm fortunate enough to actually make a living out of my passion, and that's what brought me here. I didn't come here to make money. That's not the ultimate goal. And I always tell people the consequence of a job well done is that you will eventually make money in whatever field. You do a proper research, you do your job as an engineer, you do your job as a doctor, you're going to get paid for a job well done. If you look at Timepiece Gentleman, someone who was always driven a bit by money and the fact that he did something really well, he did see the potential of it, and then he was just driven by the money aspect. Again, I'm not looking to bash, I'm not analyzing anything. I'm just saying that you cannot change who you are, in the sense of you have a lot of choices to make in your life, and you can choose the path from the beginning of, okay, do I really want to do only this for the money aspect, and is that your goal, or is it something that you're driven by the knowledge, the fact that you're going to meet a lot of people, the fact that you only want to get extremely rare pieces, and there's a lot of dealers that are only aiming for that one single thing, is finding really rare pieces to impress their customers, to refresh and to find more and more and more. But I just find that kind of goes and backtracks on the fact that not a lot of people have those 30, 50, $100,000 budgets to buy a watch. The fact that someone doesn't have that kind of budget of 50,000 or $100,000 doesn't make them less interesting from collector's point of view or from a business point of view, because dealing with someone that has a limited budget can also create a really strong relation, and that person also is going to maybe develop a passion for watches. Doesn't mean they have to buy expensive pieces. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because this whole industry has become an elitist type of industry, where if you're not wearing your valuable watch on the wrist, maybe whatever amount, you're not being respected or you're not being looked at. And this isn't exactly what it's not supposed to be. We have to go back to our roots, and that's why I'm trying always to go back to what was done before, to actually understand what's coming up in the next and in the future. I was explaining on one of my comments, it hit me a bit to the heart to say, okay, this is just a trend, vintage dealers are just trying to make it whatever again. And I'm like, no, it's always been there. I've been making my living selling vintage audio equipment, vintage watches. If you don't know about me, I'm not just doing that. So those vintage watches have just been left aside by that hurricane of the new trends of trying to sell a brand new model every single year. Rolex comes up with 4, 5, 6 different dials or models, actually not really reinventing anything, by the way, and everyone's impressed by a different color of a dial, but they haven't reinvented anything. And coming up with a new dial every year and limiting it for a year or two doesn't make it more interesting as a brand. What happened 20 years ago is that we were seeing Motorola's, we were seeing a lot of different brands of cell phones, and today we only see maybe 2 or 3 brands, and it just became so uniform in the whole market. And that's what could happen to the whole watch industry, where we see, for example, only Cartier, Omega, Rolex, Patek, and maybe a few other brands, including even Vacheron, which is amazing, by the way. It's only that they're very limited in terms of sales and in terms of demand, just because people have always kind of left it behind, and they're always in the shadows of Patek, even though they are, anyway, to me, they are really on par with what Patek does in many, many aspects. So that's why I really want to talk about the watches that I have here. And I will always abide by what I like. Would I really enjoy doing more business? Yes, I would. And I want to stay honest to myself and honest to the people that are trusting me and that have been supporting me for so many years, including customers, including friends, including everyone that's around me, that understand what I go through. And it's not because I want to be stuck to the past, not at all. It's only the fact that I'm still finding exceptional pieces in the vintage. The day I will stop finding exceptional pieces, and regardless of the value, okay, it doesn't have to be very expensive pieces. It's just because they're really unique and really in good condition for the age, that just makes them a lot more desirable to me in terms of condition, in terms of how rare the dial is, in terms of me not ever seeing that again. I'm never gonna find certain pieces again in my life, and that's not what I'm being stuck with them, and that's not why it is. It's only that the market is really looking at very little information right now. I'm gonna go back to Hodinky. It became a newsletter. They were actually pushing vintage. They were pushing all sorts of different watches back in the time, and they got in the same aspect as everyone else. They try to go only for the elite, only for the people that can afford those 10, 20, $30,000 pieces. And that just backfired on most of dealers right now. You cannot just hope that everything is just going to keep on going and going and going in one single direction. We have so many people that are looking for so many different things, and I meet a lot of customers from the States or from Europe, a lot of them from France, a lot of them from the UK, and they come in the store and they're so different from what we see even on the local market, where people just know a few brands, or they know just a few models, and it's highly refreshing. I have 10 watches here that have been on the website for a while, and I'm gonna talk about them and describe them and tell you what and why they're being stuck right now with me. So one of the ones that I want to talk about first is I have a Wittnauer Professional, the 246T. This is a 72, pretty big size watch for the time. It's a 38 millimeter case, black dial with the Wittnauer only. There's no Wittnauer Geneve, which is very common. This is a bit less common. This Wittnauer being all original from the time, including the crown, the pushers, the dial is very good. The loom on the hands is very good as well, on the whole dial and everywhere. There's maybe a little speckle by four, you know, for something. But overall, those watches don't come in often in this condition. I had another one a few months back. The dial was not even close to this one. The hands were really not in good condition as well. The case was pretty similar in terms of condition, but overall, just saying, that watch, I put it in auction on eBay. I got my money back. I was happy just to break even on that one. But people don't realize that finding a vintage watch that's in really good condition overall is very hard, okay? And a watch including this one selling for double of what I sold the other one for only means that this watch will be serviced. You have it guaranteed for 2 years. You have a watch that's a lot cleaner than the one that I sold, and that adds to the value of the watch. A lot of people also in the vintage world are mostly looking for a low price, but low price doesn't buy condition. I'm gonna buy a watch from an end customer. I'm not gonna pay a lot less because an end customer comes to me, or a dealer that knows what he's talking about comes to me and knows about the watch. I'm gonna pay practically the same. I'm not gonna take advantage of an old lady or an old man just because they don't know what it is. I'm not gonna pay $500 and try to sell the watch for $10,000, $20,000. Other people come to me and they found those watches cheap in garage sales and estate sales, from elderly people, from original owners, or from, could be whatever. They could have been found in any kind of situation. They could have been found really cheaply, and good for them. I'm happy for them to make the money. But I'm always trying to buy as a dealer and to be respectful towards the person who actually comes and supplies me, to actually be able to have a good name and buy more in the future. If I keep the good name, I'm able to buy more. So that's one of those examples where I sold something that was subpar in terms of condition for about half price of this one, and I was happy just to break even because I just bought it on a picture and I put it on eBay, and that's what I do, and that's why a lot of the inventory that's been stuck is only because I never decided to actually put it in auction on eBay, just let it go for whatever I can get, and lose some, make some, it's fine. But in those cases, and that's why I want to talk about those 10 watches, is that people don't value quality over the quantity of poor watches out there, okay? So you can get the same watch in 10 different examples. Maybe one or two of them are going to be really good, and the 8 of them are always going to have something wrong. The pushers are wrong, the crown is wrong, the dial has been touched up or has been, damaged by some sort of humidity or by a clumsy watchmaker or of any sort. So that's what happens with vintage, is that when you get a good watch, it's always good to actually value the watch for what it is. And it's always better to pay more for a good example than buy the garbage that's being polluting the market for such a long time. You have a lot of repainted dials. You have, especially, I'm going to talk later about the Universal Geneve. Universal Geneve, same thing, a lot of repainted dials. So that's why a Wittnauer like this one is really good. It's a really good example. The case back, you can tell, has been slightly polished maybe in the past, but overall it's very good. It's one of the good ones out there on the market, and I don't want to give it away. I pay a lot and I don't mind keeping those for a long time, just because I do understand that people who actually buy those are also a bit more rare, again because of the factors that we talked earlier, but it just creates something that's cool, and I want to keep that in my inventory. If I don't sell it, I don't mind. I don't want to sell for nothing, and I could have sold it for maybe making $200 as is, whatever, and you move on. But that's not the point of having and finding such a rare watch in today's market. We just don't find those every day, and if I do, maybe one out of two, one out of three are going to be worthy of keeping in the inventory and in the display. The next one that I want to talk about is the Breitling Navitimer, the 2300, which was also used by the Iraqi army. This one is new old stock, and still has the sticker on the back. The bracelet is brand new. It's super firm. There's no scratches, barely a few little marks from handling for the past 35 years or 40 years. And this one also has the box and the manual, which is really cool. People don't really appreciate those, just for the fact that a lot of them are broken. A lot of them have the display that's been leaking, so it's costing a lot of time or a lot of money to repair those. But this one is new old stock, and it does come again with box and papers, so the appreciation for something like that is lacking. Whereas the Iraqi ones have had a peak of demand maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, where people were going bananas for them. And that's something again that's extremely desirable in anyway to me, but maybe not for most people today, just because I appreciate the model. I appreciate the fact that some armies use those, just because it's a very reliable watch, or was back then, and it's still a pretty sturdy watch. It's very thin because it's quartz, and most Navitimers tend to be much bigger, and it's an era that's very interesting for the time. I'm gonna jump to the Universal Geneve, something that I really enjoy. I bought this watch from a gentleman in Ottawa. He came all the way here. He sold me 2, 3 watches, I believe, back then. And this one, again, I'm stuck with it in a way. Maybe because, yes, I'm asking a bit more money than usual for something like this, but there's a reason to it. First of all, the watch is in unpolished condition. The pushers don't have any drag on them or anywhere, just because those, if you do look them with the loop, they have angles to them, and they normally are very worn. Even by looking at them with my naked eye, I can tell the pushers are good. The dial is, although slightly pitted, if you put direct light to it, overall it's a good 8, 8.5 out of 10, considering that the watch is from the 1940s. Also, the case back is very, very good. It hasn't been, to my knowledge here, I can still see that it's the original finish on a case back. The only thing that might have been replaced, and I think was replaced, was the crown, but otherwise the watch is very, very good. And what's so special about this one is that the dial is a gilt dial. Universal Geneves have been very problematic from the 30s and the 40s, not because they had any problems by themselves, but just because normally their casebacks were snapbacks. And that actually created a problem, just because the snapback was not waterproof. What was happening was that the case was actually letting water and humidity go in. So as soon as there would be some rain or something like a very humid environment, like Montreal, for example, is very, very humid, that would damage the dial, and those dials would usually be repainted, replaced, or touched up, or in most cases, if you find an original one, it's all pitted, it is highly damaged, and that's why those dials have been repainted. This reference is really rare, not only for the fact that the dial is original, but the dial is black. It's a gilt black dial. Also, the fact that the case is stainless steel and it's gold top. Not only gold top, it's rose gold top on top of it. So that's why I bought it for a high price myself, because I appreciate how rare those watches are. I appreciate the originality of the watch. And that's why I want people to understand, and I want people to get what I do as a living. It's not only the appreciation and the fact that I'm buying the watch just to make money. I'm buying a watch because I like it, because that's who I am, and I'm liking something that's original, that's really cool from the time, that actually adds value to the watch, not to my profits. Not at all. I'm not going to make a killing on such watches. I buy them because I like them, and I'll pay whatever I need to pay to actually market it and actually bring it to the market and bring it to people who actually appreciate what I'm buying myself. And that's for most of them. The fact that people are backing out from vintage because of how many dealers themselves or how many guys are just looking at, oh, the watch I can get it for 2,000, I'll list it for 7, 8, $10,000. How good or how much of that watch is good is the problem. And the problem lies within the fact that you need to be a bit of a professional or a bit of an expert about every single brand of or every single model that you're looking at. If I'm not knowing something, I'll look it up. I said it previously. You need to take the time to learn, to detect if there's a problem. And in those cases, I don't like to buy watches, or I like to buy them really low because I'm going to buy them for parts, or I'm just going to buy them, dismantle them, and they're going to end up on eBay for parts. And in most cases, people think that you're going to be screwing them because you're telling them bad news about the watch or the fact that the watch is not correct. And that actually a problem creates a problem that a lot of people are not trusting who and what we're doing. And that's why I try and I tend to be as honest and as straight as possible, with everything I do. If it's something that I don't like, it's never going to end up on the website. It's never going to be sold as all correct. Again, did I ever make a mistake? Maybe I did in the past, or maybe I will in the future. If I see something that's not correct, or I don't spot, let's say, a pusher or a pair of pushers that have been replaced in the past, or little details, anyone can make mistakes. Did I ever make big boo-boos? Never really. Just because I'm really thorough, I'm the one opening those watches, cleaning them up. I did videos about that. And it's very important to actually transpire that to the customer, okay? It's not just a flip. It's not something that it's just monetary. It's something that's very important to understand what we have in our hands. Well, to understand, not even me, all the dealers. You have to understand, if you have something rare, why is it rare? If it's something that's bad, why is it bad? And that's what we're doing. The rest of the watches here that I do have 4 Tudors. It happens to me overall in a year to get maybe 30 to 50 vintage 34 millimeters just in the Tudors. Some of them are going to be a bit more rare. Some of them are just simply super clean, unpolished, untouched. What you don't see is that most people are going to pick and choose their Tudors. I work with people where I have to buy everything, have to make offers based on 1 or 2 pictures. I don't get to do backouts or do any of that. So what happens in those cases is that I'm going to be buying a watch, and I'm going to get the watch in the store. I'm going to be opening it, assessing the case. Has it been polished? Has it had any damage? I do have watches here that are just taken apart just because I didn't see it, but in the picture, one of the lugs was bent, and you only get to see it once you pay attention in person, and those watches never end up on the website. For example, I do have here an Oyster Prince 34, which is the tuxedo, and this, just by the weight, we can feel it. It has the caliber 390, and this reference is a very well-known reference. It's a 7950. I've had those in the past. Some of them have the 390 movement in copper plated, some of them have it in stainless steel plated or chrome plated, and those are the more desirable ones because those were the ones ending in the Submariners, okay? So some of them had to take apart just because the watch was terrible or was gold plated or whatnot. And the movement by itself is worth a lot of money for someone who has a bad movement or who has a damaged movement, and they're just going to take the whole movement and swap it out with the other one. Does it make it the Franken watch? Probably. If you keep the original main plate or whatnot, we can play with words, but I don't think those have a serial number. They don't actually. So it doesn't really affect the value of the watch. It's not like a Rolex where you might send in a Rolex and two-tone might have been swapped into a stainless steel, full stainless steel 1675, for example. So it doesn't have that effect. But that's what happens with those, is that once you get to know what they are, once you get to appreciate the movement, you understand that this is a very rare watch. And it's not something that's very desirable right now, but I think with the fact that Universal Geneve with their pole routers, which have the same or almost identical case to the Tudor tuxedos of the time, like the 7950, and I have here a 7967, they do share a very similar case, except that these ones are a lot, let's say, less desirable than the Universal Geneve. So I'd say 90% of people are going to go for the Universal Geneve before going for those, but it's still very desirable in terms of a tuxedo dial, in terms of design. They're about 80-90% of the same. So you can always be sure that you're going to get something very, very good out of it. The one watch that's really interesting in the whole lot is the Zenith Subsea Diver with its 4 crowns and pushers. So you have the crown right here that actually turns the whole bezel inside, and it's very well built, super quality, with the famous star in the back and the Guy Frere ladder bracelet. So that's a really an interesting watch overall. I really enjoy this watch, and it's one of the watches I always wanted to own. I actually cannot wear it. I have too much of a small wrist. But that's also something that's extremely, extremely rare to see. If we look right now at the pages on the Chrono 24 listings, so we see different ones at different prices, whatnot. And this one, for a reason I don't understand, is it's the most rare variant with the just simple black and white. So there's nothing exotic about it or anything. And I believe that in those, around the $10,000 mark, I do understand that a lot of the newer chronographs, including Omega, including even Zenith, the new stuff they're making in Canadian funds, is a really good buy when you buy something new that's almost, 30, 40, 50% off, depending on which models. So I do understand the attraction of buying something brand new and saving thousands of dollars, but owning something vintage like this is totally different. Again, it's not something that is misrepresented by the market or undesirable or whatnot. I just find that, yes, it's expensive. Yes, we do pay a lot for them. We have no choice. But at the same time, you have to understand that for me to actually get one of those watches in unpolished condition, all original, including the crown, with the ladder bracelet that's pretty good, if not very good. It's also unpolished. It doesn't have any weird sag or any major damage, except maybe the clasp has a little ding, like in the light you can see a little ding. But otherwise, watches like that are really hard to get. And to actually get those and to appreciate them as a dealer, we have to pay quite a bit for them. And it's also the fact that collectors have been dragged from the vintage world, as I said, towards the new world, and they're creating new and new models every year. Every 6 months something comes up, and Rolex comes up with every single new model just by difference of a dial, or Omega comes again right now with the Speedy and the white. Why are they doing that? It's just because they want to push further and further into the purchasing wheel, okay? So that purchasing wheel has been degrading over the past 2 years, with the economy going down, with everything else just slowing and slowing down. There's a lot of YouTubers that are talking about this, and I'm emphasizing that on the fact that people want the new toy, the new toy of the last week or of next week. We're eager or we're eagerly waiting to see what all those brands are gonna come up with. And everyone talks to me about the new trend, the new model, the new this and the new that. And I'm like, it's all the same. It all comes to the fact that people are using marketing to push new objects to you. Does a white dial that's brand new, that's going to be mass produced, is it something rare? No, it's not. But just because something, it becomes something of a hype in this moment, and you have to understand that you don't have to fall in for this. It's always been there. The only difference right now is that they have accelerated that circle of new trends and new watches that are coming in every single year. That's deceiving because it's like telling a brand, or it's like saying that the brand is not trusting in what they're making. They have to reinvent themselves every single time to say, hey, we got to make something new to hype up the brand, which shouldn't be the case. A Speedmaster has not changed in the, let's say, in the looks that we know since 1965-66 after the Ed White. All the other Speedmaster, except again little details, we know bezel dot over 90, the logo was printed or not, it was in gold, little details like that. But if we're looking at a Speedmaster from the 90s, 2000, 2016, 2020, and from 1965 from afar, they all look the same except the patina, but the rest, in 99% of the essence of the watch, it's the same watch. Why did they believe for 60 years that that watch was the watch that everyone wanted, and they didn't have to step away from that? Now they're stepping away from that, creating more and more limited editions, and they're coming with Snoopy dials, with all those crazy things that make no sense in the market to come up with so many of them. Not a single, even the richest millionaire, okay, who's collecting watches is not going to be able to keep up with those trends. And we cannot keep up, even as dealers, to actually find every single model that someone's looking for at that particular moment. It's impossible, okay? And that's why vintage is, in a way, its essence is actually very, very stable. It's already imprinted in the stone of the vintage world. Okay, it's already been made, and it's been made well. Now companies are reproducing what they already did 30, 40, 50 years ago. Why? Because those models are very well made. They're still in very much demand. I have a lot of disappointment towards the companies because they are really going towards your pockets. They're not going for, hey, we trust we're doing something good. We don't have to produce 50 models of the Speedmaster to make you buy, or to find something that you like in the lineup. You should like what we're already making, and we've been making for 30, 50, 75 years. And that's why reinventing yourself is very costly, and you are paying the price for it. I am paying the price for it, and a lot of my customers are losing money on very, very rare watches that are made in very limited editions and that are 1, 2 years old, but no one knows or no one wants because they're funneling everything towards Cartier, Omega, Rolex, Patek, AP, and a few other brands. Okay, where really those 5 to 8 major brands are basically monopolizing everything, and everything else, including vintage, is disregarded by a lot of people just because they were never exposed to it. Everything that's exposing watches right now in the vintage world is dealers like the newsletters, everyone is actually pulling out from there because they don't see a market, they don't see any monetary value to it. So obviously we are left to actually do what we're doing, and doing videos and doing our storytelling and understanding and making people understand how those things actually got here. Because it's not only a transaction, it's not only business. It is something that I enjoyed, and that I've been collecting myself, and I'm actually passionate about. And you don't have to fall in that trend of always and always buying the new toy, because you're always going to keep on losing, okay? It is marketing. I'm not trying to market anything. Those watches talk by themselves. It's only that you need to understand what they are in order to buy them. I'm not forcing you to buy anything. You are coming to me and I can guide you or tell you what it is. And then you do your research and then you come back and you buy the watch. And I'm more than glad to do that. You know, I'm not a salesman and I never will be. It's all about you, what you want, what you need, or what you're looking after. If it's something that I'm going to sell you, you're going to be sure that I'm going to be standing behind it and I'm going to be 100% behind the transaction. The other thing is that you know that everything is original. If not, I'm going to say it. In most cases, it's everything as listed. Okay. The one thing that I wanted to finish off with is actually the longest listing that I have on the website, and it's a Speedmaster dummy case. A lot of people don't understand that those are extremely rare, and those watches are actually not watches, they're just a case. Everything is there: the hands, the dial, the pushers, the crown, including even the stem that goes in the movement is there. Even you have the case back, and then the dust cover of the movement is also on top of the plastic case that holds the dial and the hands in place. So I bought, I believe, 4 or 5 of them from a gentleman in the US. He had bought them from a old watchmaker. I sold 2 of them. One of them he had installed the movement in it, but it was still brand new. And the other 4 cases were like this one. What's cool about them is that they're from 1978. Obviously, you can use them to put your own movement in them. But what's cool is that to find a watch that's basically new on stock, obviously you have to find a used movement for it. But to find something like that from the era with the everything correct from the era, including the hands, the dial that patinated in a very attractive way, that's something that you never see. Okay, so that's why I kept 3 cases. They're still in the inventory. Only one of them is listed on the website. I think maybe 2 of them on eBay. But those are something that people, I'd say maybe 5 years ago, 7 years ago, would have highly appreciated. Today, again, it comes to the fact that, hey, it's not a complete watch. It's not new old stock. It is new old stock, but it's not a watch. It's a dummy case, which and by itself is extremely rare, even more rare than a lot of watches. So to have a watch that's basically brand new from the time is literally impossible. So if you have a beat up watch and you want to make it look brand new, you have the movement from 1978, 79, 80, because those were periods where those cases were produced in 1978, but later used for the next 3-4 years. And that's what happens. A lot of those people that were really interested in making their watches look perfect, they might keep, just the movement from it and make themselves a perfect watch. All those people are less and less inclined to buy those pieces, again, because of the market changes, because of what they are. But this is a reminiscent, and this is something that actually shows what was made back in the time and how one of those watches used to look like back in the early maybe 80s or late 70s. So that's why I have a lot of appreciation for something that's brand new, that's never been used, and also that's 30, 40, 50 years old, just because we understand how the watch used to look like. And if someone comes to us with a watch that was polished in the past, I have the example of saying, hey, look, this is what Omega was doing back in the time, and we can compare side by side and say, hey, this is why the watch is not perfect. All of that said, I don't want to sell you vintage. I want you to appreciate it for what it is. It's not something that I want to push on people. It's not a case. I'm just telling you that by not getting informed, but by not doing more than what people do in general, we're going to destroy this market, basically. We're going to destroy everything that was done before, and a lot of the market is going to disappear over the years. And I don't want it to happen, not only because of me, because I'm a small fish in the pond. Basically, there's much bigger sharks out there that are dealing with thousands and thousands of watches yearly. I'm a sub 1,000 watches a year dealer, so I don't make a difference. But you guys are doing a huge difference by consuming whatever you're consuming. And that's why I want to give you an alternative, to give you something that, A lot of dealers don't give you a choice. A lot of dealers tell me, oh, I'm not going to sell this because I don't have the customers. But if you educate and you take the time to know yourself what you're dealing with, you're going to be able to sell anything. And it actually limits your choices because the dealers are limiting themselves. I know a lot of dealers that only deal with maybe 10 different models of Rolexes, 2, 3 models of Omegas, and then if you go in the AP and Patek, there's again like another 5 models maybe, all the same sizes, all the same thing, repeating themselves non-stop. If I would do that, it would be extremely boring, and I would limit myself and I would limit the quality of my customers coming in. I mean, the quality is their knowledge is what they also bring me, because a lot of people teach me stuff. I am by no means knowing everything. If you do know what's going on and what you're buying, you're going to be a lot more inclined to be a lot more curious about the next purchase you're making. And that curiosity is making this whole endeavor and this whole business and collecting very interesting, other than just doing the same all the time. I wish you good luck, guys. I wish you to do interesting purchases, and I hope you like the video. If there's anything that you like or you don't like, just tell me in the comments and I'll try to correct it. If there's anything else, I'm here for that. We're gonna try to do lengthier videos and pick up whatever you need out of them. I do talk a lot. There's a lot to do and a lot to say about what we're doing. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I wish you a good week, guys, and see you in the near future. Thank you.